What's up, dudes? Okay, today I want to talk about how I developed my art style. So this is something I get asked about a lot, and there's really no easy answer. So what I'm going to do is run through a sort of history of how I started by drawing X-Men cards all the way to now, and how I developed my style over the years. Before we jump into it, I want to say that style comes from making a lot of work. So in the case of drawing or designing, the more you do it, the more you'll have to figure out, and the bigger library of ways of doing things will build up. But really, if you're focusing on how to develop your own style, it comes from all of your influences. So the best thing to do is be influenced by a ton of different stuff. And you'll see when I go through everything that my influences started very narrow, and then they got broader and broader as time went on. So now, I love comic books, so I'm looking at comics, but I'm also listening to music, and how does music influence how I make stuff visually. And t-shirts and cartoons and movies and kids books and all of it. The wider range of stuff you're looking at, the more you'll have to draw from, the more your voice becomes unique and personal, and yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Let's jump into all this. Alright dudes, I wish I had some of the actual drawings, but when I was a little kid, mostly what I drew were X-Men cards, X-Men comics, and it wasn't long before I started drawing video games, and then Dragon Ball Z came out. Back then, all I really did was copy drawings, and that's a great way of starting to learn how to draw, is just copy stuff. And always make sure you tell people when you copy something that it's copied and where it's from and all that, but that's really a fantastic way to learn. And that's really how I started to learn how to draw, copying these X-Men cards, Dragon Ball Z drawings, all that stuff. Alright, skip forward to high school, and that's when I drew my very first mini comic, and I think I might do a video on this down the line, but this was the first comic I ever made that I made copies of and gave to people and everything. And it really wasn't that long after that I started making even more, just really simple mini comics. And getting into this stuff is where I really found my love for storytelling, not just drawing, but storytelling. Way back when I was in high school, the internet wasn't as, this is gonna sound really weird to a lot of you younger people, but it wasn't such an everyday thing, and people weren't putting their lives on the internet, and it just wasn't as much of a thing as it is now. And so it was a lot harder to get access to the things that you sort of fall in love with. And so when something came along back then that really blew your mind, it was very precious. And it's something that you poured over and over again, because you weren't always seeing new stuff all the time. So there's two comics that really did that for me. The first is when I found Becky Cloonan's work, and you can see these look very similar to my comics look very similar to hers. These just blew me away. The sort of punk rock vibe to them. They were super accessible. The artwork was awesome. Just black and white, really killer looking stuff, right? And I loved this. I poured over it. My style was pretty much a direct copy of this. I mean, you can totally tell I was just aping her stuff like crazy. Okay, so I found this book in like a Barnes & Noble or something, and this was the first time that I realized what comics could be. They weren't just the X-Men. These are like super personal stories, just about being young, and I really latched on to Nate Powell is the artist on this book, and this was a huge influence. not only in the way I drew, but also the way I told stories. You can really see that in this mini comic. So this was the very first 1% press release. The publisher that I co-ran with my friend Stephen Floyd, this was the first book we released. It's a very short little comic, and you know, very heavily influenced by that Tiny Giants book right there. Okay, so now I'm in college and I get introduced by some friends to King Cat. John Porcellino, if you look at my work and know John Porcellino, he's the person that I get compared to the most. He had a very, very huge influence on me style-wise drawing in college when I realized that you can simplify your artwork down to just the minimum of lines and still convey so much emotion and feeling. Okay, so after seeing John Porcellino's work, you know, I poured over it and really I started to simplify. I got rid of all the black, you know, filled in black ink, and started making comics that were much more simple, much more direct. And yeah, I started making comics like this. The other person that I was introduced to around that time is Clutch McBastard. So he is now a good friend, and Clutch was doing 4-panel daily diary comics. And so if you look at these, you can see exactly where Simple Routines comes from, right? So once I got my hand on these, I poured through these books, and that's when I started drawing Simple Routines. So here's the very first Simple Routines. You can see that the artwork has come a long way, but it hasn't really changed a lot. And I think this stage of my life, going into my senior year of college, and this is when I really clicked into how I liked to draw. The other thing I should say is if you want to get good at drawing, doing a daily comic strip is a fantastic way to do it, because you have to draw characters over and over and over again, and you learn a vocabulary of how you draw things, and really that is a big part of where your style comes from, right? Learning how I draw hands, how I draw faces, that all came from doing a comic every single day. Simple Routines has since changed by them, but it started as an everyday comic. Okay, so leaving undergrad, going into grad school, I started, you know, I was drawing non-stop, and I had a lot of friends that were making cool, really awesome work, and these are some of the books that really stuck with me. You can see, like, it's still simple, it's still evocative, but pretty and just amazing work here. These are just some of the artists that got me back into the idea of really loving to draw. And so this was a big breakthrough comic for me. This book was me remembering that I loved to draw. I started using a brush again and really just, you know, kind of putting more of an effort into the actual drawing, as much effort into the drawing as into the storytelling and all of that stuff. I also think that here is where you can start to see where my current style comes from. Okay, so here is a sketchbook from grad school, and I want to say that sketchbooks are an amazing way to draw, and you can fill them up with really crappy drawings and just have fun, goof around, you know, take notes, plan stuff out, and really, you know, draw turtles and fish and frogs, and they're a great place to experiment with different tools, really get the hang of, you know, figuring out how you want to draw something and not have, you know, there's not a lot of pressure. You don't have to show it to anybody. You know, you can draw whatever you want. Okay, so after grad school, I fell back in love with Akira Toriyama. I hope I'm saying that right. He's the creator of Dragon Ball, and this book in particular, I can't read it. You know, this one's all in Japanese. I think there's an English version, but you know, whatever. This is about a little vampire kid that gets angry and turns into a koala bear, and it's just bonkers. After reading this and, you know, thinking about childhood, nostalgia, all that stuff, that's when I started making work that was a little more, whimsical and fantastical, but still personal and feelings and all that stuff. And, you know, I started drawing stuff with giant fish and mosquitoes and rock creatures and underwater turtles that ask me to punch them in the face. Just weird stuff. And I think as much as practicing drawing and trying to figure out how you want to draw, you got to be drawing the stuff that you want to draw. That's how you stay excited about learning and all that stuff. Alright. Okay, up until this point, I've been talking a lot about comics, and for a long time, that's really all I cared about. After grad school, I started working at Target, and I was designing t-shirts, and I fell in love with t-shirt designs, and these are some more recent examples, but, you know, I have a crazy t-shirt collection. I love t-shirt designs, and I spend a lot of time looking at t-shirts, and you know, you can get inspiration from all kinds of different places. For me, like, you know, I love punk music, so album artwork is a big deal. And then, of course, just other illustrators, you know. I love looking at all kinds of illustration and, you know, watching movies, cartoons, listening to music, all of it. Your style comes from the sum of your inspiration, and really the more you take in, the more stuff you reference and combine and make new, the more unique and personal your style will become. Okay, so it's the sum of all the parts, right? Everything over the years, all the way back to playing Mega Man, you know, drawing Dragon Ball and X-Men cards, all the way to my huge book and t-shirt collection, to the movies I watch, the music I listen to. It all comes together to make my style. It's all the things I love and look at and spend time with. It all comes together to make something that is uniquely me, but also something that's hopefully relatable, because we all share these influences and we can all get behind some Dragon Ball and some Mega Man. Alright, lastly, I want to say the cool thing about drawing and style is that it's always evolving. The different tools you use, the more stuff you look at, it's always changing. I still feel like I haven't totally figured out my style. You know, it's something that I've been working on for years and years and years, and I feel like it's gonna keep evolving years and years and years to come. So if you're trying to figure out your style, don't worry about it. Just draw. Just make the images and the stuff that you want to see in the world, and you'll figure it out as you go. The more you do it, the more you'll figure out, the happier you'll be with the work that you're making. So just keep it up. Don't stop drawing. Okay, I think that's it, right? Okay, dudes, thank you so much for watching that. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'd love to answer and talk to you guys in the comments. I don't think I'm gonna list out all of the things I showed, but if you have a question about something in particular, ask about it and I'll tell you all about it. Also, I want to say that what I showed is a very narrow sampling of the stuff that I loved, and you know, don't think that I was only looking at those things and that's how I got my style. There's tons and tons of other stuff. Actually, just to give you some perspective, these are just some of the books I own, some of the comic books. I know I showed a ton of comics. These are just some of them. Alright dudes, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you have an awesome, productive week, and I'll catch you later. Bye!